contemplating a bill that not only contradicts federal law, but also guarantees a lawsuit that will potentially cost us hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars in legal fees. What are we doing here? At a time when our governor warns of a recession on the horizon, why are we choosing to engage in legal battles we know we cannot win? Senate Bill 362 is not just an affront to workers' rights. It's a gamble with our state's economic stability and reputation.
State Senator Nabila Islam Parks presents her arguments during a contentious debate over a bill that Democrats say potentially limits the way unions could form at businesses that accept state tax exemptions. Good evening and welcome to Lawmakers on the 17th day of the Georgia General Assembly. I'm Donna Lowry in Atlanta. We'll have a rundown on the action in both chambers today in a moment. The Senate approved a sports betting bill that allows voters to decide on the issues. On the show tonight, two Republican senators will talk about the legislation and why they think it's good for the state. Also, the U.S. Supreme Court heard oral arguments today on former President Donald Trump's challenge of a Colorado ruling disqualifying him from the ballot. In Georgia, Democratic lawmakers filed similar legislation this week to do the same thing here. It's a long shot given the Republican-controlled General Assembly, but two of the sponsors join us in the studio to talk about it. First, a roundup of the day under the Gold Dome from Capitol correspondent Sarah Callis.
Hi, Donna. Lawmakers debated several contentious bills in both chambers today and agreed on tax reform bills. The House passed a series of bills dealing with tax reform today, including an income tax cut. Members unanimously approved House Bill 1015, which reduces Georgia's income tax from 5.49% to 5.39%. They also okayed a bill that doubles Georgia's homestead exemption from $2,000 to $4,000, and another bill that increases the child tax deduction from $3,000 to $4,000. A bill seeking to create a new city in Gwinnett called Mulberry sparked debate. Senate Bill 333 would allow voters in unincorporated northeast Gwinnett County to form the new city of Mulberry.
It was not partisan at all. There was overwhelming support. Residents crying out saying we need local government that'll listen to us. We feel like we're being heard, where we can get some responsiveness. It was nonpartisan.
But not everyone supported the measure. Several Democrats representing Gwinnett spoke in opposition of SB 333. They said the feasibility of creating a new city has not been thoroughly explored.
I do believe by hearing the voices in Gwinnett County, you will understand that this is a big deal. So we should take the time to listen to some of the voices of those who have spent years in several meetings in planning on the direction on how we grow and how we sustain the services we provide to our citizens.
The bill ended up passing 101-63. Another contentious debate, this time in the Senate, over SB 362. At stake, whether the state can control how businesses who negotiate state tax incentive deals can allow labor unions to form. The bill, which wouldn't affect any deals the state negotiates until after January 1st, 2025, would require that businesses keep employee information private and only allow a union vote by secret ballot.
It does not prohibit a company's employees from unionizing or require an employer to oppose unionization efforts in any action. Employers are free to agree to hold union elections. However, employers only lose eligibility for state incentives if they decide to skip secret ballot election when it's available, or if they choose to disseminate employee personal information without their consent.
Is it not true that this bill does nothing to require an employer to oppose unionization efforts in any action before the NLRB, or require an employer to campaign against any sort of unionization?
That is true, Senator.
Democrats say that this is just another attempt to keep unions from forming and violates federal labor laws.
What this bill does is says the state of Georgia knows better than this old school, effective federal framework. What we're going to do is say we need to put our thumb on the scales as a matter of economic development incentives and law. State law is going to push the thumb down and say, employers, you better think twice post the effective date of this act about using voluntary recognition. Instead, we're going to funnel you through the much more painful secret ballot process. We're going to take away one of two federally guaranteed options for organization that have served this country well since 1935. So that's illegal, and it will be litigated, and we'll spend a bunch of taxpayer money.
The unfortunate truth is that this bill continues the trend that we have seen of the majority prioritizing big business over the interests of everyday, hardworking Georgians.
After 3 hours of debate, the bill passed along party lines, with Republican Senator Colton Moore voting with the Democrats, 31-23. The Carter Center hosted the first annual Mental Health Parity Day at the Capitol. They announced the result of a year-long campaign to spread awareness and implement the mental health parity law.
Before the campaign, 40% of women cited insurance as a barrier to mental health care. After the campaign, only 10% said insurance was a barrier. This was a 75% drop.
Lawmakers say it's a good first step, but more mental health legislation is still needed. Lawmakers will reconvene tomorrow for day 18. A Senate special committee investigating Fulton County District Attorney Fani Willis is expected to meet for the first time. That's all for my Capitol Report. Donna, back to you.
Sarah, thank you for that wrap-up. Once again, it looks like the General Assembly is headed toward approving a bill to legalize sports betting. The Senate passed a measure last week, but there's still a long road to the possibility of sports gambling in Georgia. Tonight, two proponents join us to talk about it. Republican Senator Clint Dixon of Gwinnett County. He's chairman of the Senate Children and Families Committee. And Republican Bo Hatchett of Cornelia. He is vice chair of that same committee, the Senate's Children and Families Committee. Thank you both for being here. Before we get started with you, though, Chairman Dixon, you were the sponsor in the Senate on the City of Mulberry bill. And so we just heard what happened in the House. For people who don't know a lot about it, tell us why you sponsored that bill.
Yeah, so it's simple, more local control for the residents in the area of Mulberry. Had a strong outcry from those citizens. They felt underrepresented. And simply what was happening, we have a commissioner in the area that took a stance. There's about 14,000 apartments in that district, and there's a lot of infrastructure issues, mainly dealing with traffic. And he took a stance to deny a lot of those high-density zoning, especially the residential zonings. And quite frankly, he was getting outvoted in his own district by commissioners that don't represent the area. So that's where the outcry and the upswell from the residents for more local control came from.
So it did pass in the House, I believe 101-63. It's not headed to the governor's desk, but there's the next step, and that is that the people in that area will vote. How soon will they see it on the ballot?
May. They'll see it in May, so it will come quickly, yes.
Yeah, and so you're feeling pretty confident that this is a chance for them, those who live in that area, to express how they feel, whether they want to be a city?
Yeah, I think there's nothing more American than, allowing our constituents to vote their own destiny, and that's what we're doing simply here, is allowing them to vote, and if they choose to incorporate, then the city of Mulberry would come to fruition.
Okay, well, let's get into sports betting. Let's start with you. Let's talk about HB 386. Explain why you became a co-sponsor on this.
I think the way sports betting is handled in Georgia right now, obviously, is a problem because we cannot regulate it. It's happening. If someone from out of state comes in and it's legal in their state, they're being able to place bets. Money's going to other states or to offshore accounts. What this bill would allow us to do is to put some guardrails on the sports betting process and also allow the state to generate some revenue. There's projections that it's over $100 million that we're missing out on every year on bets that are being placed right now within the state of Georgia.
Yeah, so there is, 20% of the take after the people who win get their money, right?
Yeah, that's
and the
correct.
money the money would go under the Georgia lottery umbrella.
That is correct.
Yeah. So tell us why that was important for you.
Yeah, as education chairman, understanding, last year, we fully fund Hope and the Zell Miller Scholarship. We moved it from it covering 80% of tuition for students up to 100%. So the demand on that program is going to continue to grow, especially as our our state population continues to grow and more students are going to college. And then as far as the pre-K portion of it, we've got long, waiting list for kids that sometimes don't ever get into the Georgia pre-K program. A lot of different reasons are happening. There's, staffing, but then also classrooms. So we definitely need more dollars going to both of those programs. And this measure would send, as Senator Hatchett said, over $100 million a year to help that.
Yeah, so we know we've been here before where it looks like it's going to pass. Before we go any further, let's hear from someone opposed to the measure, Mike Griffin with the Georgia Baptist Mission Board.
They use the placebo of it's for the children. And legalizing and extending moral vices has its greatest negative impact on our children. And I think last year the lottery raised, $1.5 billion. We have millions in surplus in our state. So it's not like we're lacking any money to fund education and to help our children already.
Senator Hatchett, so your response to that?
Mike does a great job advocating for the Baptist ministry, and him and I usually agree on just about everything. And I understand his argument, but what we're doing with this is, we're really putting guardrails around the sports betting process in the state of Georgia, and we're going to be able to regulate it, which is something we can't do now. And I think the money that's being spent right now in the state of Georgia on sports betting that's going outside the state, if we're able to capture that, it is going to help with the Hope Scholarship, and it is going to help with pre-K programs. And I think that's important. And if we can capture that while at the same time regulating an out-of-control industry in the state, I think it's a positive thing for Georgia.
And one of the things that we know is that if it passes, there are licenses. And so one will go to the Georgia Lottery Corporation, but then there are 8 others. What are those licenses about? Who gets them?
Yeah, so total there's 16 licenses. One goes to the lottery. You have what we call 7 that are untethered. Those would go to sports betting companies, and there's several parameters that they have to meet to qualify to even apply for the license. The application fee is $100,000, and then if you obtain a license, it's $1 million a year that you have to pay in licensing fees. But you've got to be a sports betting company operating in other states and several other safe stops to make sure that it's a viable company. And the other 8 licenses, they go to all of our professional sports teams, and then they would partner with and we call those tethered licenses, and they would go to those sports teams, and then they would partner with one company to separate, where they're not handling the sports betting.
Okay, so say that the House goes, passes it, and then the governor signs it. You still have the something that was added, and that was an amendment to the Constitution. So it goes as a referendum to the voters.
That's right. The voters will get to decide.
Yeah, and I know that's not how you originally wrote it, though, right? So how are you feeling about that?
Like I said, with the city of Mulberry, anytime that you put a measure out to the voters to vote, I think it's the most American way that you could ever create legislation, allowing folks to decide their own destinies or the issue at hand. I think it's always best. In this particular measure, I didn't think it was needed because of the funding going to education and going to lottery, where it's really needed. I mean, there's essentially a bucket of $100 million plus every year that we're missing out on. We don't have to raise taxes for that. That can actually go as a new revenue stream to education where it's vastly needed. And of course, like I said, again, being chairman of education, that's where my heart is. So
there'll be a lot of marketing, though, to if it is signed by the governor, to educate people about what to expect on all of this. Okay, before we forget, I want to get to a bill you have, SB 466. You have a bill that focuses on an AI loophole.
That's right, and it was brought to my attention from the Attorney General's office. Right now in the state of Georgia, there's a new defense that's becoming popular when someone is caught with AI-generated child pornography. And they're saying that because it's AI-generated, it's a defense to the crime, and they're able to get off. What we see here is something that's not uncommon. Technology is outpacing legislation, and when the legislation was originally drafted, artificial intelligence probably wasn't contemplated. So What the bill would do is take away that ability to use that defense and outlaw, essentially, something that's going on right now that really needs to be stopped.
Yeah, we're gonna have a show next week that talks a lot about AI, but there's probably a lot of little loopholes out there in terms of legal matters that AI is, we can't even imagine what's out there. So this is specific for pornography and people using AI as a defense.
As a basically sexual exploitation of a child.
Yeah.
And they're saying that, well, it just looks like the child, it's not actually the child.
Oh.
And that loophole is becoming a problem, and hopefully this bill will pass and we'll be able to close that loop and look for more that need to be addressed as well.
Okay, and you said you just dropped that one, so we haven't seen that go into a committee or anything yet.
That's right. We dropped it yesterday, Senate Bill 466, and hopefully we'll get a committee hearing next week.
Okay, we'll keep up to date on that and everything else with sports betting and all. I want to thank both of you for coming on the show. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Well, coming up, Democratic House lawmakers discuss their efforts to try to keep former President Donald Trump off the Georgia ballot. Stay with us.
Lawmakers is made possible by Georgia Farm Bureau. With over 80 years of helping everyone understand the importance of agriculture in our state. After all, ag is Georgia's #1 industry. Food and fiber production represents over $74 billion in output of Georgia's strong economy. The Georgia Farm Bureau legislative team works to represent producers across Georgia at the state capitol during the session and year-round. Georgia Farm Bureau, the voice of Georgia farmers.
People put their faith in PBS because they know that it is constantly delivering quality. It covers the whole of the United States. It's a free and independent media.
We go where the viewers are.
What are the conversations that are happening right now?
We feel that civil discourse is a civic responsibility.
What we do is authentic reporting that people can trust.
We give time so you can hear voices on all sides of an issue.
This is the place that people turn to for stories that matter.
And they know that when they walk away, they will have learned something about the world around them.
That's why this makes PBS important for daily life and, in the end, our world.
Thank you for joining us.
Community. Learning, working, playing, celebrating. Doing life is always better together. At GPB, we aim to provide you with the tools to be able to do life together well. Our mission to educate, inform, and entertain inspires everything from our wide range of programming to our stimulating radio conversations to our fun in-person events. We've got something for everyone. Visit gpb.org/community to learn more about our upcoming events.
Welcome back to Lawmakers. I'm Donna Lowry. While the U.S. Supreme Court focused today on the Colorado case, in Georgia, Democrats also want to keep former President Donald Trump off the ballot here in Georgia. Joining me are two House members who have filed legislation. Democratic Representative Roger Bruce of Atlanta. He's in his 21st year in the House. Wow. And Democratic Representative Derek Jackson of Tyrone. He is a retired military officer with the U.S. Navy. And as I always say, thank you for your service. Thanks for being here, coming to the show. So you each have legislation. One is a resolution and one is designed to have the power of law. So Representative Bruce, tell us first about your resolution dealing with keeping the former president's name off the Georgia ballot.
The whole idea of elections is to put people that are qualified in these roles. And my background, as you probably know, is human resources. I never interviewed anybody that I thought was unqualified for the job. It was kind of a waste of time. And that's kind of how I see this. Donald Trump has violated all parts of the 14th Amendment. He's called the Secretary of State here in Georgia and asked the Secretary of State to do something that was illegal, to rig the election. He's just not qualified to hold that office. And so that's why we want to take him off the ballot.
Yeah, so the resolution is different because that it doesn't have the power of a law.
It does. It asks the Secretary of State to basically declared to hold that office and therefore should not be on the ballot.
Okay. So then how is your legislation different?
So House Bill 1159, it goes to the heart of Section 3 of the 14th Amendment. We're simply saying that if you violated the oath that you took and sworn to protect and defend this country, and you violated that because you participated in an insurrection, you should be disqualified forevermore.
Okay, so that's what we've been hearing a lot nationally, certainly today with the U.S. Supreme Court, oral arguments and all of that, and what some of the states have tried to do. That's what you're looking to do.
Absolutely, because one of the things you had discovered, Donna, is that when we all raise our right hand and then place our left hand on the Bible, we're basically telling the public we're taking a pledge, not to a person and not to a party, but to the Constitution and the set of laws that we're in. And so when you look at the 14th Amendment of Section 3, that was ratified after the Civil War. Why did they do that? Because they wanted to make sure that the Confederates would never have power to do what they did during the Civil War. And so they wanted to make sure that they would never be elected. And so that's the reason why Section 3 of the 14th Amendment was ratified after the Civil War.
And you told me earlier, I just mentioned your military service. You took your oath with the military seriously, and that's why this is kind of near and dear to you in terms of this?
Oh, absolutely, because as a retired military officer and all the other men and women who are supporting and defending our Constitution, they're putting their lives on the line. And when you think about the heart of the oath, it says support and defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. Well, it's real easy to describe a foreign enemy, but what is a domestic enemy? And the domestic enemy is very clear in Section 3 of the 14th Amendment.
Okay, I wanted you to respond too. Did you want to add anything to that?
No, I mean, he's not qualified for the position. That's really all it boils down to. And, you know, I asked the simple question, and we were talking about it earlier. You've probably told somebody in their life that when you grow up, you know, you go to school, you study, you work hard, and one day you can grow up to be the President of the United States. I actually do not want my children to grow up to be like Donald Trump. So we want to make sure that the man is not qualified, he should not be on the ballot, and we shouldn't be voting for him.
This is a Republican-controlled state, though. You put it out there. What do you think the chances are, though, of it passing or getting anywhere?
So both between Representative Bruce's resolution and my bill, we don't believe that's going to work through the legislation for the very reason that you mentioned. But it also highlights where the Republicans stand, right? Are we going to hire someone with 91 felonies, 4 indictments, and 2 impeachments? Would anybody hire this person to work at their corporation? And the answer will be no. So why would we do the same thing for the state of Georgia? And so I encourage my Republican colleagues to say, where do you stand? Do you protect and defend this Constitution? Are we going to put country over party, or are you going to continue to do party over country? So I would love to hear the Republicans, how they stand on Representative Bruce's resolution and my bill.
Yeah, but they have the control over whether or not it makes it into a hearing.
And again, for me, I just want to be clear. This is not about the Democrats or the Republicans. For me, this is purely about Donald Trump, period. He's not qualified to hold a position, and that's why we put the legislation in.
All right, sounds like you're standing on principle on this.
That's all it is.
Okay, I want to mention a bit of Georgia history on this topic. And it's also appropriate because it's Black History Month. GPB's Grant Blankenship has a fascinating, expansive story about it that you can read on gpb.org. But here's the gist. The first Black person to serve in the U.S. Congress from Georgia was Jefferson Franklin Long from Macon. He was elected in 1870, 5 years after the Civil War ended. While there, he made history again in 1871 when he became the first Black person to speak on the floor of the U.S. House. And he argued against a bill designed to grant amnesty to Confederate veterans. The legislation opposed Section 3 of the 14th Amendment, which is under debate in this country right now, and these gentlemen just spoke about. He said in his speech, quote, "I think that I am doing my duty to my constituents and my duty to my country when I vote against any such proposition." Well, in the end, the amnesty bill did pass. And again, you can learn more about Grant's article and learn all more about this story on gpb.org and at the Tubman African American Museum, which is located in Macon. So you didn't even know that history when you came in here today about that same section.
But it sounds like we're channeling his spirit.
Yeah. All right. I want to talk, Representative Bruce, about another bill that you have. You have legislation, the Georgia Equity and Fairness Commission Act. You essentially want to create a reparations task force. Tell us about it.
I want the state and the country, really, to look at the effects slavery had on African Americans. You know, we often are told, you know, to go pull yourself up by your bootstraps, but you got to have some boots if you're going to do that. And the playing field is just not level. It never has been level. And so this bill would establish a commission that would look at the impact of slavery and determine what kind of remedies should be put in place. They told us about the 40 acres and the mule back in the day. I'll take the 40 acres. I don't particularly want the mule. But the reality is that we have to look at what the impact has been and how do we level the playing field. And it's really good for everybody. It's not just good for African Americans. Our economy is based on people spending money, interacting with each other, and if we have more people to participate in that process, the better our economy is going to be. And not as many people would need government assistance if they had the ability to take care of themselves. If you look at the way things were set up, you know, on one side, you had the slave owners that passed generational wealth all the way down. On the slave side, they passed down dependency. And I want to stop that. I don't want us to be dependent. I want us to be able to compete equitably and be able to move forward in society.
This is something that some other states have done. Did you model your bill after anything?
We looked at some of the other states. We looked at there's some people that are doing it at the federal level as well. And, you know, it's everybody's trying to do the same thing. We're trying to level the playing field, and this is our method of trying to do it here in Georgia.
Is it definitely money you're looking to get?
Well, it could be money, it could be all kinds of, that's the whole point of having the commission, for the commission to look at the impact and determine several things. Money may be one piece of it, but it may be other things too. And that's the whole point of the commission, is to come up with 5 or 6 different ways to determine how to make the playing field level.
How do you expect the bill to do?
Well, you know, as you pointed out, it is not we're not in the majority, but if you don't try, it definitely won't happen. So my thought process is you try to get people to understand that this is not just a bill for African Americans, for Black, it's for everybody. Because if we level the playing field, then more people can participate in the process and fewer people would have to depend on the government.
Yeah, I'm thinking you're shaking your head. I agree with this.
I am. I agree with Representative Bruce Bill. In fact, I co-sponsor on the bill. And when you think about reparations, because I know everybody, when you hear that word, they cringe. But reparations was done by Abraham Lincoln in 1862. April of 1862, Abraham Lincoln realized that he had to do something to help his Emancipation Proclamation that he knew he was going to sign. And so what he ended up doing, he gave slave owners $300 per slave. And then later on that same year, Donna, in August of 1862,
unfortunately, we're going to have to hold it there. Okay. I'm going to have you come back to give us a history. I know all of you with your military background, you know history. I want to thank you both for coming on the show. That actually does it today for our Lawmakers. Tomorrow, look for our Capitol Report at the end of PBS NewsHour. And Lawmakers returns on Monday when we'll learn more about a bipartisan foster care and adoption bill. Have a good night.